You could be forgiven for thinking from the thumbnail for this video that it's just clickbait, but unfortunately for me, it's really not. Through here is the secret garden, and it hasn't received any TLC since the spring, and I think it's fair to say that at the moment it looks like an absolute disaster. So let's go and have a look. Hey everyone, how's it going and welcome back. This was a video that I hadn't planned on making. In fact, this week's video was meant to be an early autumn garden tour, and I was going to show you all around the whole place. And what I realised was that I haven't really done very much work, to say the least, here in the secret garden. So, as you can see, I didn't get dressed up. I decided I was going to take today to work on the secret garden and get it really spruced up so that it would look good for the garden tour. But when I got in here, it was so much worse than I'd expected, and I realised there was so much more work that needed to be done than I'd expected. And if I'm honest, I felt really demoralised. And then I thought, rather than doing a whole garden tour and spending a whole day working in here just to get it looking nice for a garden tour, I'm going to share just a bit of honesty with you this week, and we're going to work on this place together because autumn is a really good time to get a load of tidying up done because things don't grow as fast. So if we get the tidying up done now, not that much more is going to need to be done over the next few weeks and months until winter kicks in. But certainly there really is a lot to do. First of all, check out the grass. I really haven't done anything with it, and it's now nearly a foot high. You can see I made a start with the lawnmower, so we're going to have to get that done. But as I look around, I can see a load of jobs that are going to need to get done. For starters, the pond. I think the word neglect is the correct word. It is completely thick with duckweed at the moment. It's like soup and it's really disgusting. So I'm going to get that cleared out. Even the entrance to the secret garden is just that bit too cramped at the moment. We've got a really large fatsia that's growing that really, as much as I like that feeling of being able to kind of creep in through to get into this space, it's now just too much overhead. And then the box hedging needs a bit of a trim to get it ready for the winter. I need to do a bit of a weed, and a whole load of other things just need cut back, tamed and controlled. So this week's episode isn't going to be a really nice how-to. It's just going to be me in my old clothes working on this area. But it's nice to be able to share with you, I suppose, real life in the garden sometimes as well, and exactly what needs to get done to stay on top of this place. So let's kick off and we'll get that grass cut. Okay, so that's one job done. The grass is cut, and although it is certainly not going to win any awards, it makes the area look considerably neater. I think one of the upsides of the garden here is also a downside, and the fact that this has got so unruly shows the downside. The garden here is really subdivided into lovely little private areas, and that's great. But if, like me, you've had to focus on one specific area for a long time, in this case, it's been the vegetable garden and the polytunnel, other areas can really quickly suffer because they're essentially out of sight and out of mind. And that's what's happened here. Surrounded by all of the hedges, I find that sometimes for weeks on end, I simply haven't come into this garden, which is such a shame. And then the messier it gets, the less likely I am to actually go into the garden. But that's where all of today's work comes in. I'm going to get it back to even somewhere close to its former glory. So now that the lawn's done, let's crack on and we'll get on with another job. Before I tackle anything else in the borders here, like pulling out brambles and weeds and dead plants, there is one job I want to do that actually is really enjoyable, and that's cutting back aquilegia. The secret garden has loads of aquilegia plants and I adore them. They look beautiful in the late spring with those really interesting, delicate looking flowers that are purple or white or pink. We have a whole mix of them here, and you can see that those flowers are borne on these really quite tall, sort of 2 or 3 foot high flower spikes. They're such an interesting plant and I really like them. And one advantage of having done nothing with them for the last couple of months is I can collect the seed. And that's why I want to tackle these first before I tackle anything else. If I go in all guns blazing and start ripping stuff out, I know that these are going to get shaken about and they're going to shed their seeds everywhere. And instead, I want to be able to save some of those seeds for next year. So I'm going to go at them with my trusty secateurs and just very gently start clipping away all of these old flower spikes that have the seed heads and keep the seeds for next year. So the next thing that I'm going to tackle is this, the really big fatsia japonica. Now, as you can see, it sits basically at the entrance to the secret garden. And as lovely as it is with its big, mature, exposed branches and stems, it really gets in the way of getting in, particularly if you're my height and about 6 foot. It's a shame to lose the branches because they are lovely, and you can see in the bark as each leaf breaks off over time, it leaves a leaf scar and it makes these lovely markings. And it does have quite a cool form, but as well as being awkward to get past, it interacts really quite badly with one of the Robineus pseudo-acacia trees that we have and also the bamboo behind. And the result is really just a big tangled mess that isn't particularly nice. It also completely shades out the bed just below me, which isn't perfect either. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove some of the branches. I'm going to do that really quite gently. I'm not just going to go in hard at the base of the tree and remove it all in one go. I'm going to take it step by step and see how the form changes as I start removing limbs. And then I'll stop when I think I've got something that works nicely. The great thing about a fatsia is you can cut it back really, really hard and it's going to regrow from the base. And certainly last year I took some big branches off and I can already see there's some great regrowth lower down that if I more carefully manage it over the next couple of years will create a plant that's got a better form and won't block the entrance quite so badly. So, time to get started with the pruning saw and get rid of some of these limbs. So you'll see that actually I'm using a very small pruning saw at this stage, and that's because a little bit of advice I would give is that if you're going to be seriously cutting back something like a tree or a large shrub, do it slowly. Unless you know for sure what you want to get rid of, just take a branch at a time. It allows you to work carefully and reassess each time so that you don't risk taking off a massive whack and then regretting it. So that's what I'm doing. I've been slowly working along, taking branch by branch, and I can see that ultimately these two need to go as well. Once these are gone, just like this, then I'll get the larger pruning saw and I'll take out this main trunk. But at least I know that I've been able to work bit by bit, and then I know that I'm happy to take this out as well. And with that last bit gone, you can see It's really opened up the space now. You can walk in, it's so much more welcoming, particularly as you just come round this corner. It's like the whole secret garden just opens up now. Way nicer. Now, I may end up cutting a little bit more off over the next few weeks, but at this stage, I'm really pretty happy with what I've got. The only other thing that I want to do is remove some of these yellowing leaves. They're not quite ready to break off yet, so I'm just going to go in with the secateurs and remove them, just to give everything a much more nice green and tidy appearance. And that's another job finished. So on the other side of the secret garden, we have 3 of these really lovely miniature bamboos that have lovely nice fine leaves and fine stems, but don't be fooled. As delicate as they look, they are absolute thugs. They have pretty much outcompeted anything that's near them, whether it's other plants, because we've got a nice bergenia behind here, or the box hedge on the other side. And believe it or not, this time last year, I cut this clump alone completely to the ground. And this is the growth that it's put on in about a year. So what I need to do is try and get really these plants under control. So what I'm going to do this autumn is exactly the same. I'm going to completely cut it to the ground, and then as it starts to come back, I'm going to try and keep it much more in check and much more into a smaller clump. I'll see how I get on with that. It might be a bit of a mean feat, but certainly right now, all of this needs to go so that I can have a much tidier section here, because behind me is actually a little patio area underneath the Japanese maple, but you can see how much the bamboo has run and spread back there as well. So it's time to really get stuck in with the secateurs and cut all of this back. So that wasn't too bad. 10 minutes work. I've got this whole miniature bamboo completely cut right down to the ground, and you can see quite how much I've had to cut off. But although the area now looks a little bit bare, it certainly looks a little bit tidier, and now I can try and stay on top of this clump. But not only does this need done, you can see in the background there's another big clump that needs exactly the same treatment, because bless him, the poor little Buddha statue is pretty much getting completely subsumed by that bamboo. So that's the next task. Oh man, let's talk about the pond. And actually, I really wish I hadn't mentioned it at the start of the episode, because I'm so ashamed of how bad it is. I focused so heavily on the pond in the back garden that this has really been neglected for the last few months. And this is what happens if you neglect a pond. It gets really soupy and really full of duckweed. I don't even want to stick my hands in it. It's just horrible. But it's not that big a job to get it cleaned up. All of the pond plants along the edge closest to you, I'm going to lift them out, get them clear of the area, and then I'm going to get going with the net, and I'm going to clear all of the dead leaves, all of the duckweed, all of the debris off the surface of the pond. I'm going to get the pump running again, and then I'm going to get the plants set back in, and we should be done. It is so thick with duckweed that even as I go through with the net at this point, it just instantly covers over again, back to a carpet of green. And of course, all of this duckweed and dead leaves and algae and all of that, yes, you don't want it in your pond, but it's still good. You can put it into your compost heap. It'll break down nicely, and then it's not going to waste. Well, I don't know about you, but I think it's looking much, much better, albeit there's still more duckweed to go. That's just kind of how it is. You never get rid of all of it in one go. So I'm going to keep going with this, but look, finally you can see the water again. The plants are shown off a little bit better now, and the pond looks, well, more like a pond. Next job. It's normally at this point that I would go, ta-da, job done. Clearly, it's not job entirely done this week, but I've made a load of progress and I feel like I've wrestled the garden back from the brink of disaster. Now, for some people, this maybe wasn't looking that disastrous, but trust me, when you're up close to it, things were not in a good state. But over the course of today, I've managed to get the grass tamed, the hedges cut, a whole load of weeds removed, seeds collected, the pond cleared, and the entranceway into the secret garden sorted. That's a whole load. And even if I don't do anything else, I feel like at least the garden is now set up for autumn and going into winter. So now I can at least come into it and enjoy all the lovely specimen plants and trees as they start to change colour during the autumn. We'll come back to that in an autumn garden tour video, and we'll talk about some of the individual specimen trees and shrubs that we have here, because they look epic once their colours start to change in autumn. So hopefully today's video has maybe just eased you a little bit, that if you're looking at a section of your garden and thinking, oh no, it is such a mess, that actually even just putting in an afternoon's work can really make so much of a difference. And then when you look out and you see something that looks better, you feel better. And then it'll probably encourage you to get back out and keep doing a little bit more. And then you're back on track with keeping it looking good. So if you enjoyed the video, as ever, make sure to give it a like, subscribe if you're not already, hit the bell icon. That way you'll be notified when I post my next video. And as ever, until next time, see you later.